transactions in brokered messaging. See, when we have got multiple messages which are posted into a queue or a topic, we want these messages all to be processed together as one unit. For example, let us say my website takes a request for subscription of a course from the user. On making the payment, I would like to perform multiple tasks, and for each of the tasks, I'll create a separate message in the queue. One would be I probably need to insert a record for that user registration. Two can be I need to send a welcome message to the user. Three can be I need to probably have that course activated. So course activation details needs to be there. And one more maybe I need to send a welcome message to the faculty, that is the trainer of that particular course. So for each of these, we might probably architect in such a way that we would have multiple messages posted into the queue. So yes, obviously all four messages now as they are related, we would want them to be processed, all of them as one unit or none of them. So how are we going to do this? For this, we make use of a transaction scope object, what we generally used in database operations, the same thing here also. So the transaction support in the service bus brokered messaging allows message operations to be performed within a transactional scope. Of course, there are some limitations to it. Now, what is that? Within the current release, what we have right now, only top level message entity, such as only one queue or maybe only one topic can participate in a transaction. That means when you are writing your code under a transaction scope, you cannot have messages fetched from multiple queues, or you cannot have it from multiple topics, or you cannot have it from one topic and one queue. No, not allowed. All messages must be fetched from only one queue, and otherwise all messages must be fetched only from one topic. So that is how you have to mark it as a transaction. Making transaction spanning a message entity across multiple queues or topic and database is not possible. So it is going to be something like this. We are going to send a message with a transaction scope now, and these messages are going to be posted into the queue, which have to be processed later by a receiver application. So let us now build first a center application. All the common steps I have to again perform. Transaction center demo app. Transaction, let's call it as queue. Add the reference to system.configuration, NuGet package, service bus. Let me keep the receiver also ready. Create a new project, console application, transaction receiver demo app. Should be transaction queue. I have transaction queue sender, I have transaction queue receiver. Receiver also I will add the references. System.configuration, NuGet package, service bus. Same story to be repeated. And for both of them, we will need the key, copy, and paste in the respective config file. Same thing. Now we have it in sender as well as receiver basic setup done. Let me copy the program from the handout. Nicely coded, easy to understand. For this, we'll need to add the reference to system.transactions. And on top using system.transaction. Here we are getting error message factory. Okay, ultimately we want queue client. We'll do it the way we are doing it in the past. First, we'll have the connection string. Now, once we have the connection string, we know that we want to work with queue name. Let's call it as demo queue only. And based on the demo queue, I would now like to get the queue client. Create from connection string, comma, queue name. And then rest of the code is perfect. Sending. Now what are we sending here? We're creating a transaction scope object, and under that scope we are sending around 10 messages. So we are going to get 10 dots for 10 messages, and then it will be said done. What is important is after done, the messages are not yet part of the queue unless we execute scope.complete. For that, I have put a condition here. Commit send 10 messages, yes or no. And I'm reading the message. I'm reading the console input, checking whether it is yes or no. If it is yes, then I'm completing it. Else, I will do abandon. Console.write line and the program is terminating. So pretty clear. We are getting the reference to the queue client, posting the messages in loop. What is extra? This part is extra. We're posting it as a part of transaction. And what is because of the transaction, we have to also execute complete. But that is done conditionally. So let us run this program now. Control F5 I have pressed. Sending. Something went wrong. Partition key, session key missing. Partition. Okay. See, the basic requirement is all those messages which are part of the same transaction are supposed to have a common partition key, some demo partition, so that the same receiver can receive it. Now it is supposed to work. All the 10 messages are posted into the queue. Now should it be committed or not? I can control that, say no, and you will see that the messages are not there in the queue. And this we can see in queue. Go to demo queue and we will not have any messages. But the same program I'll run once again and I will say yes. In the loop, all the 10 messages are posted into the queue. I'll say yes. And this time, let's close it and come back again. And we should be able to see that There are 10 messages. 10 messages in same partition. And for transaction scope, partition is mandatory. Now time to write the code for receiver. So I go back to the handout, and here at top my code for transaction to receive. Receiving of messages is another scenario where we can make use of transaction. Now, when a group of messages that are related together, maybe in same session or partition key, either they should have all a same session or they should have a common partition key. If possible, to receive a message in P clock receive mode and then complete, defer, or dead letter the message in one transaction. All this we can do in one single transaction. So what to do now? Let's copy this part where we would like to read from the queue client. But how do we get the transaction scope? Here also I have to first add the reference to system.transaction scope, system.transactions, service bus.messaging. Now we need to get here also the queue client, the same code as in server I can copy. This is queue client. Now we are receiving. In loop we are receiving. Loop begins here and ends here. Now after receiving the messages in the loop, this is normal routine code, nothing special. But every message we are marking it as complete. And finally, we have actually marked this as scope.complete. And that also I am using a condition. If yes, then I am marking all of them as complete. Of course, in project, it will not be like this. It will be like probably code for processing all the messages. And then eventually write here complete. So run this, received messages. It is receiving all the messages. Commit messages. I'll say no. Now what will happen? Let us go back and see here in DQ. I mean in demo queue. We still have 10 messages. Run the same application again. The same messages are getting received once again. But this time I'll say yes. I want the transaction to be committed, not abandoned. Now run this. Once again, you'll see there's nothing. There are no messages. Nothing is received. Nothing to commit. And you'll notice here, refresh it. There are no messages. So this is how at the time of sending we use transaction scope, ensure that all of them are having same session or partition key, and at the time of receiving we again make use of transaction scope, and after processing all the messages successfully at one go we would execute scope.complete. Though it is not necessary that the queue is supposed to be transactional, that's all in this.